Most players aren't losing because they suck. They're losing because they copy players who suck. In most 2-5 and 5-10 games, even the regs are making massive mistakes. They look solid, they sound sharp, but they've hit a ceiling, and if you copy the same plays they make, you will too. In this video, we're breaking down the 10 most common mistakes that trap players at low and mid stakes. These aren't solver errors or advanced theory leaks, no. These are simple habits, things you do every session that quietly kill your win rate. You'll learn why you shouldn't be scared to bluff fish, why trying to copy solvers is probably hurting your game, and one of my favorites, the same move that means completely different things when a fish does it versus when a pro does it, and I promise you've never seen this broken down in a YouTube video before. This is the same system we use to teach our best students, some of whom are now earning over $100 an hour playing live. We don't make income claims, we don't guarantee results, no. We just want to pass down the lessons our best performers are using to crush the exact games that you are playing in. If you've ever felt like you're playing fine, but you're still stuck, hopefully I'm about to show you why. Let's fix it. All right, the first mistake I see a lot of even solid players make is not differentiating between this move when a fish does it versus when a pro does it. So let's jump in, let me explain. This first hand here, we're playing 2-5. We're playing against recreational Richard. He opens, we're gonna defend on the button with King 9 suited, and we flop a flush draw. He c-bets, we are going to call. Turn is a blank. He's going to double barrel for a big size. We are going to call. Now the river is a deuce, and recreational Richard checks to us on this river. One of the big mistakes I see even a lot of solid players make here when a recreational player checks, just going for a medium or maybe even like a pot size bluff here on this river. This is a huge mistake, I think, versus the player pool. When a recreational player bets the flop and bets the turn and then checks the river, it means something completely different than when a pro does it. In this case, most of the time when a recreational player checks the river, they are checking with the plan to check call. If you're going to bluff them on a river like this, you're going to have to choose an egregious size that they didn't expect. And if you've got this much money behind and they're not that sticky, maybe you can get them off of a hand like Queen X or Pocket Kings or something like that. But just know when a recreational player checks the river here, in general, they're not planning on folding. Betting 250 or betting 300 on this river is not going to get the job done. Most of the time when I'm trying to get a recreational player to fold, I like to tell them twice in no uncertain terms, excuse me, sir, your hand is definitely not good here. And on this river, no matter what size we choose, we can really only tell them once. So this is a spot I'm not really comfortable emptying the clip against a recreational player. They just have a much stronger range when they check this river than when a pro does. So why is that? Let's say we play the same spot against a pro. Pro Patty here opens, we defend, they're going to c-bet, we call. This time we turn a pair, they are going to double barrel, we call. And now in the river, look at this, we back into trips and now they check. This means something completely different against a pro because pros in general are much more willing to value bet thinly. And the other key piece here that I don't want to leave out is pros double barrel at a much more appropriate amount than fish. When a fish double barrels, especially for a big size, that just weights them towards value hands. So when a rec bets the flop, bets the turn, and then checks the river, their range is just more weighted towards these stronger hands because they really only double barrel their strongest hands. So a recreational player, they're checking the river because they're not value betting thinly enough and they're planning to check call. A pro in this situation, if they have kings, if they have ace queen, if they have king queen, a pro is much more willing to value bet thinly. So when a pro checks the river in general, they are much more likely to just be giving up. If I back into a very strong hand here against a pro, I think they just don't have kings or ace queen or those type of hands all that often. So I may just choose an egregiously small, insulting size here, trying to induce a spaz from the pro because in general, when they check on this river, they're just checking to give up. Whereas same spot against a rec here, I just think they have stronger hands. I think they have hands like kings, aces, ace queen, king queen. On this river, when everything bricks, I think a lot of players are very, very unlikely to fold, even if we choose an egregious size. So the question I'm always asking on this river is, what would I do with the inverse, right? What would I do if we bricked on this river, right? If we had king 10 of hearts and we bricked on this river, what size would we go with king 10 of hearts to try to make pocket aces or ace queen fold in this situation? Because we haven't told this player twice that their hand is no good. We haven't put in aggressive action ourselves up to this point. I don't think I'd feel comfortable making a hand like like ace queen or pocket aces fold if I had king 10 of hearts. So I'd probably just check back and give up. Or maybe I bet very, very small here with king 10 of hearts. Maybe I'd bet $75, $80, just trying to get an ace high flush draw to fold, possibly. So what does that mean when we back into trips? If I wouldn't go big with king 10 of hearts, because I don't think ace queen pocket kings are folding, I think in this spot we should probably just consider jamming. This is the big difference against this line versus a rec and versus a pro. And just noticing this subtle little nuance can really, really add a lot to your game. All right, the next mistake I see even a lot of solid players make is prioritizing solvers over having a thought process. And let me show you an example of this. So let's say it folds to us on the button. We open ace 6 of spades here. Elderly Edwin is going to 3-bet us from the small blind. This guy has not 3-bet a hand in 6 hours. He's been reading the newspaper. He's been sipping his coffee. He is waiting to play a hand where he can win the bad beat jackpot. If you look at this spot, in equilibrium, we're supposed to be 4-betting a polarized range versus small blind 3-bet. We're supposed to be 4-betting this hand, a hand like ace 6 suited, quite a bit. We're supposed to be 4-betting hands like ace deuce suited, ace 3 suited, hands like king 6 suited. These are our polarized 4-bets in position in equilibrium. And I fell into this trap myself very early on in my poker career. You know, I started learning theory. I started thinking,
hey, you know, this hand should just get 4-bet all the time. In theory here.
And I would just 4-bet the ace 6 suited in this situation. And what do you know? Elderly Edwin would just go all in. We'd fold and he'd wink and flash us pocket kings or something like that. And we just light $250 on fire. And look, in equilibrium, this spot is right. This is why I'm so not on board with just following what the solver says to do in equilibrium, because equilibrium is a very delicate balance. And if it becomes off by just a feather, all of a sudden the GTO solution is going to adjust a lot. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is solvers are the best exploit players in the world if you give the solver some semblance of a clue what its opponent is doing. And if you tell the solver in this spot that Elderly Edwin is just 3-betting jacks plus and ace king in this situation, well, you know what the solver's response would be? Would just be folding ace 6 suited 100% of the time to the 3-bet and just never 4-betting any bluffs here and just only 4-betting the top of our range, our very, very strong hands here. I'm not shitting on solvers. I am a solver nerd myself. I'm shitting on the way that players misapply the lessons that solvers give us, and just blindly copying a chart, blindly copying an output is not going to be the highest EV solution. And this is another big mistake that I think solid players make. Another big mistake that I think solid players make is not folding because they don't want to be perceived as a nit. So let me show you an example here. In this hand, we're going to look at a hand that Garrett Adelstein is playing on Hustler Casino Live, and they are playing, I believe, 200, 400. Garrett's going to open here with king queen, flops a gut shot with a backdoor flush draw here on an ace high board. He is going to c-bet into 2 people. He gets called by Tiger next to act, and they are going to go to a turn, which now gives Garrett the Broadway straight. Also has the queen of diamonds in his hand. He's going to go big here on this turn. He goes 2/3 pot. He gets called. River is an ace, and on this river, Garrett is going to continue to go for some value against hands like ace X on this river. So Garrett goes 20,000 for pot. We see Tiger is now going to think about this. And look at this. Tiger moves all in for 33.5K. So it is only 13 more thousand for Garrett to call. He is getting an insane price. I'm not a math guy, but like he has to be right an insanely small percentage of the time to make this call and be profitable. And you see here, Garrett just immediately shaking his head, takes 5, 6, 7 seconds, gets a count, and then just immediately folds. And we see Tiger has the ace deuce, of course, for the full house on this river. And the overall point here, Garrett, one of the best cash game players probably of the last 10, 15 years, one of the biggest winners overall. He's not scared about being perceived as a nit. This goes back to one of my favorite quotes from Art Papazian on the Old School Live at the Bike, where he basically said, this is going to be a disrespectful fold, where Art folded a very big hand like Garrett did in this hand right here, where Art's basically saying it's a disrespectful fold because I don't think you're capable of bluffing here. I don't think you're capable of jamming worse for value here. It's not that you are a nit for folding. It's essentially that you are implying that your opponent is not capable of bluffing, they are the nit. And I think so many players are so worried about the perception of them, about being perceived as good, rather than actually just making the most amount of money. We see Garrett here, one of the best of all time, just doesn't give a shit, makes this fold, even though he's getting an insane price. All right, next mistake is worrying about advanced concepts against unskilled players. So let me show you an example. This hand, we're gonna open JJ Reddix, and the big blind Fishy Frederick is going to call. I like that name, Fishy Frederick. And flop comes 6-5-3, checks over to the hero here. I see a lot of solid players in this spot with pocket jacks against a fish check back on this board because they're like,
well, in equilibrium, we're only supposed to bet a small percentage of the time because this board actually favors my opponent's range. They have a range advantage here.
This is asinine. The reason we want to check back in equilibrium is so we don't get exploited. Because if we bet too much on this board, our opponent can just leverage their range advantage and check raise the shit out of us if we don't protect our check back range. If we only check back our medium and weak hands here, our opponent can just absolutely punish us across the turn and river. Do you really think Fishy Frederick is going to punish us for range betting on this board? Here's some of the check raises Fishy Frederick is supposed to find here. King Queen with the Queen of Clubs. King 7 of Hearts. Pretty much anytime he has a 7 in his hand, even without a backdoor flush draw, he's supposed to be check raising here. King Queen of Spades. So just 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw. All of these hands are supposed to be check raising. Do we really think a fish is finding these check raises? So the question I'm always trying to ask is not what is the equilibrium, not who has the range advantage. I'm trying to deduce here, where is this player going to make the most mistakes? And in general, most players, especially fish, especially recreational players, just play so shittily against a range bet. Shittily, is that a word? Shittily? They play so shittily? They just don't know how to respond to a range bet. They're not going to be check raising you enough. They're going to be fast playing their value way too much. They're going to be calling with their weak stuff way too much. You just get to punish them by range betting. If they are making mistakes, take advantage of the mistakes they are making. Next mistake I see a lot of solid players make, and this is a big one. They're scared to bluff fish. Let's talk about why this is such a big mistake. We are going to open 10-8 of spades on the button here, and a fishy player is going to defend in the big blind. We flop an open ender. We are just going to c-bet. You guys probably know I like to choose a size where they raise a strong stuff, call with their weak stuff, usually in a single raise pot, about half pot. We go half pot, he calls. Turn is the innocuous 4 of diamonds, so nothing changes here. Villain is going to be mostly capped, which means they don't have their super strong hands, because in general, on a wet dynamic board, a recreational player here is going to raise pocket 7s, pocket 9s, 9-7 suited, right? They're going to raise their strong hands, but that doesn't mean they're going to be elastic on this turn. Elastic meaning they're going to be price sensitive. If they have hands like 9x, ace-x of clubs, king-x of clubs, if they have these type of hands, they're probably not folding even if we go big. So both my value and my bluffs want to go big on this turn, not because I'm worried about being balanced, but because with my bluffs, I want my opponents to put in the most amount of money right now and then get them to fold later. And with my value, I want them to put in the most amount of money now and then get them to call later. We are going to overbet on this turn. Our opponent calls, we go to the river, and it is checked over to us. And so many players in this spot are just absolutely terrified to empty the clip against fish. And if we look at the spot in equilibrium, we see 10-8 of spades. It's actually going to be profitable. We are winning EV here on this river by jamming with the overbet jam for $800. And this is in equilibrium. It's already going to be a profitable play to go all in. But we are not playing in equilibrium. We're playing against a fish. And guess what? In a wide versus wide range spot, number one, this guy's supposed to call on the river with ace-9 100% of the time if we jam for 2x pot on this river. Is this happening? Do we think they're calling with top pair 100% of the time? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, next, they're supposed to call with 7-5 suited more than 60% of the time on this river. Do we think this is happening? That they're calling with second pair for a 2x pot size jam on this river? And I would say, probably not. Finally, in equilibrium, this villain's supposed to get to the river with quite a few combos of pocket 9s, pocket 7s, and 9-7 suited. So they're supposed to have some very strong hands here, and of course, these hands are never folding. And do we think at 2-5 that a typical recreational player is going to flat to a small bet on the flop with 9-7 suited or pocket 7s, and then just flat on the turn again when the board is so wet and so dynamic? No, probably not. They're just raising these hands. And if a recreational player doesn't have 9-7 or pocket 7s or pocket 9s getting to this river, that means they're going to have to call even lighter. That means their 9x is going to have to call all of the time. That means their 7x is going to have to call all of the time because they just don't have those strong hands, so they have to call with weaker hands. Most players, I believe, get this backwards. They're scared to bluff fish because they're like,
Well, fish are sticky, fish don't fold.
but because fish's ranges are so shittily constructed getting to the river, their ranges are just way too weak. I don't know about you guys, but I feel much more comfortable getting players to fold a weak range because when players have a weak range, they're supposed to call with a bunch of weak hands. And even if you think fish are sticky, are they really calling on this river with 7x all of the time? 8-9, ace-9, or king-9? And I would say probably not. And the corollary to this is if you're like,
Well, yes, Mark, I believe they are calling every time they have 7x.
well, you know what to do when you get to this river. Literally every time you have 10-9 or jack-9, you should just be jamming for 2x pot. But I'd imagine that most of us aren't doing this. We're not comfortable jamming for 2x pot with 9x on this river because we think, well, my opponent's probably just going to fold. And if we're not jamming 9x for value on this river, every time we get here with a hand that doesn't have showdown value, we should just be jamming. Overall point here, bluffing fish is so profitable, especially in these wide versus wide spots, because they get to the river with not enough strong hands and too many weak hands. That's the easiest way I can to sum it up. The next mistake I see even solid players make is they're just way too worried about bankroll. So let me explain. I get this question a lot.
Mark, what bankroll do I need to move up?
Or,
how much should I have before I start playing 2-5 or 5-10?
these questions tell me they're focused on the wrong thing because almost no one ever asks, what skills do I need before I move up? The truth is, you don't need a bigger bankroll, you need better decisions. And once you have those, the bankroll tends to follow. One of our students, Cole, who now works with us at Hungry Horse, really wanted to join our program, but he told me, Mark, I just don't have the bankroll yet. I think I'll join once I build it up a little bit. And I told him, that's like saying you'll go to the gym after you lose all the weight. That's not how it works. You go to the gym to lose all the weight. And most of the best pros I know, they barely think about bankroll. It's just not a stressor. Sure, there's edge cases like shot taking or playing on stream, but most of the time they're winning so much, the bankroll just takes care of itself. It's the small winners and wrecks who obsess over it because they're stuck in that in-between zone. So if you've ever caught yourself thinking,
I'll invest in my game after I build my bankroll.
my advice, and I'm biased, but I would instead think, I'll invest in my game so I can build my bankroll. And if you're already a winning player and want to invest in your skills, that's what Basecamp is for. It's our brand new 5-day intensive program, live interactive coaching every single day. We break down real hands and teach you how to exploit every spot, pre-flop, in position, out of position, all of it. And the entire system is built on 50,000 hours of real data. And you're not memorizing charts. You're not learning to play GTO against guys who don't even know what balanced means. No, you're learning to beat the exact type of players that you're actually up against. And you're not doing it alone. You're surrounded by other crushers who are all trying to push the ceiling on their games. A lot of players will figure this stuff out eventually. Basecamp just helps the right ones skip the trial and error and get there a whole lot faster. All right, next mistake I see even a lot of solid players make is attempting to memorize instead of learning the why. So let me show you. This hand, we're gonna open 6-5 of diamonds on the button. Big blind is going to defend. We are going to c-bet. We get to a turn, gives us an open ender. We are going to continue here for an overbet. Our opponent is capped, but they are in elastic. We get to the river. The river is a 10. And on this river, I wanna use Hungry Horse as an example here. A lot of players have watched, a couple Hungry Horse videos. They think they've picked up on the concepts. And they're like,
Well, we chose to size our opponents with raise their strong stuff, call with their weak stuff, and the Hungry Horse strategy is just to bluff really big on rivers when we get there with nothing.
that is absolutely not the strategy. And that is just completely misapplied. And so many players just try to copy and paste little snippets and end up punting a ton of EV. It's always about what is our opponent's range. And when the 10 pairs on this river, our opponent's range primarily after we c-bet the flop and overbet the turns is primarily going to be trips and draws. And draws will fold if we breathe on this pot, and trips aren't folding no matter if we bet 800 and put our Lamborghini Urus keys on the table. Is that how to say Urus? I don't really like Lamborghinis. Even if we put our Urus keys on the table, this guy's not folding trips on this river. So just trying to blindly pick little piece of strategy. I see this in the comments all the time. Oh, the Hungry Horse strategy, just go all in on the river. Incorrect. And if you just try to memorize instead of learning the why, you'll end up punting EV in spots exactly like this. Next mistake I see a lot of solid players make, and this is a big one. They want an answer. They want to scratch the curiosity itch. Did I do the right thing instead of learning to ask better questions. So let me explain. This hand, we're gonna open ace queen. Our opponent is gonna 3-bet on the button. Could go either way here, 4-bet or call. Would probably 4-bet against most players, but for the sake of this hand, we're just gonna call. We flop top pair in a 3-bet pot. Our opponent c-bets, we call. Turn is a blank, they continue, we call. We go to the river, we check it over, and our opponent jams. And the difference between okay players in the spot and players who are crushing, the okay players in the spot just wanna know,
should I have called? Should I have folded? What should I have done? What is the right answer?
Whereas a top tier player in the spot is simply just trying to ask better questions that help them come to a better decision in this spot and every other spot like it long term. Questions like, do we beat value here? Is this opponent capable of bluffing in this situation? Did we give our opponent rope? Is the size significant for the game? Do they have a bunch of non-showdown value hands here? And you see, by learning to ask better questions, we can come to significantly better decisions, not just in this hand, but in every hand we play. Next mistake I see even a lot of solid players make, and this is a tricky one, is not understanding the yin and the yang. So what does this mean? Basically, not understanding the relationship between equity in our own hand and fold equity. And the more equity we have in our own hand, the less fold equity we're going to need, and vice versa. The more fold equity we have, the less equity in our hand that we're going to need to have a profitable bluff situation. So let me show you. All right, so this hand we open in the cutoff, button calls, and on the flop, I'm a big fan of checking a lot of hands. Not all the time, but I'm a big fan of just in general defaulting to a check. Not saying I'm going to check all the time. That would be lazy. That would be just memorizing instead of learning the why. But in general, the why is because most players in the spot, if we check to them, are going to overstab and telegraph their hand strength with their size. We check, our opponent stabs big on this flop. When our opponent stab for a big size on the flop on a wet dynamic board, they have a stronger range. They tend to telegraph their hand strength with their size. But remember, the more equity in our hand we have, the less fold equity we need. When we have a combo draw, like 10-9 of hearts, we don't need a ton of fold equity to have a profitable check raise bluff here. Because sure, when our opponent stabs 50, they may not have pocket 9s or 8x here all that often. They're just gonna have queen X, big draws, sets, stuff like that. But if our opponent ever starts folding a weak queen, maybe a queen 10, a queen jack, something like that by the turn, maybe even a queen king, we don't need them to fold that often because we have so much equity in our hand, we're just gonna get there half the time. So if our opponent's folding 10%, 15%, 20% of the time, we are absolutely printing in this spot by check raising because we don't need our opponents to fold all that often because we're going to get there so damn much. As opposed to this example, we have jack 10 in the same scenario and we check it over to our opponent and they stab 50 on this flop. Check raising when our opponent chooses this size would be an egregious mistake because we just really don't have a lot of equity in our hand, right? We're just drawing to a naked gut shot. Even if the 9 is a 9 of hearts, well, we don't particularly love that card even, right? So we're really drawing to 3 outs here against most of our opponent's range. So we don't have a lot of equity in our hand and we think we don't have a lot of fold equity because our opponent stab big. So check raising in this spot, because the equity in our hand is so low and our fold equity is so low, would be a punt in almost every situation. Let me show you a couple examples in position and how this affects our strategy there. So we open on the button, our opponent calls. Look at that sweet baby there. We're gonna c-bet, our opponent calls. We go to a turn, which is a queen. This is much different than like an offsuit 3 or offsuit 6 or something like that. Our opponent can have some strong hands here. They are relatively uncapped. They can have hands like 10-8, queen jack, king 10, right? They can just make a bunch of strong hands here. But when we have an absolute monster, a big combo draw here, and our opponent has a lot of inelastic hands that still aren't going to fold even if we choose a big size, but still aren't going to raise even if we choose a small size. Hands like jack 10, 10-9, king X of spades. Hell, even hands like queen 10 or king queen that may call now, but are gonna be very squeamish on the river if we start putting in money. So our opponent is a little bit more uncapped on this card, but because we have so much equity in our hand, we need less fold equity, and we don't care if we drag our opponent to the river with a slightly stronger range because we're just going to get there so much much, so I may use a big size here with a hand like ace-10 of spades. Conversely, same spot, but we got 8-7 of diamonds. Well, in this spot, I may use a small size on the turn because I want to make sure if our opponent does have a hand like queen-jack or 10-8 or king-10 or queen-9 or something like that, that they put in more money for us right now. And by choosing a small size, we get a lot of those super strong hands to just raise right now and we can just fold. And also, we drag our opponent to the river with a slightly weaker range. Maybe we get them there with hands like jack-8, ace-9, or stuff like that would fold if we went really, really big here. And because we have less equity in our hand, we're going to want to have more fold equity getting to the river. And by choosing the small size, we drag our opponent to the river with a slightly weaker range, which is going to make our bluff more profitable, which is super important when we have less equity in our hand. So we want to increase the amount of fold equity that we have going to the river. All right, the last mistake I see a lot of solid players make is they chase shiny objects instead of trying to master the boring stuff. The most glaring example I see of this is when players say stuff like,
well, I want to learn how to beat up good players. I want to learn how to hold my own and exploit the pros and the regs,
but they still don't know how to beat up the fish. And if we look at fish tendencies here, fish as the pre-flop raiser tend to underbluff, right? They're just not bluffing enough. So what does this mean? Say we open, we get 3-bet by a fish on the button, we're gonna call, we go to a flop. This guy just stabs for 130, right? They stab for nearly pot size in a 3-bet pot. Fish tend to underbluff, especially for this big size. They are screaming,
hey, I have a strong hand.
We should just be folding here. This is how we exploit fish. Similar situation, say a fish c-bets half pot. So we're gonna continue one time, and now they double barrel on the turn. Well, they tend to under double barrel, especially in 3-bet pots. So we should just be over folding because they are under bluffing. Let's say same situation, except now we flop middle set, they c-bet. We should just be fast playing all of our strong hands against the fish because in general, they're going to be under bluffing. So we're not missing out on value of them just triple barrel bluffing with their air. We want to check raise right now for big sizes. So we saw the fish tendency was to under bluff. Our exploits in this spot, as the pre-flop caller out of position against fish, we just want to overfold to large c-bets. We want to put the money in for them when we have a hand. We want to overfold to double barrels. We want to overfold to triple barrels. And look, I know this is pretty simple stuff, but so many players haven't mastered this and they want to move on to exploiting regs. And exploiting regs is going to be so much more complex. There's going to be so much more nuance. For example, we look at fish. Fish just tend to underbluff, and these are our exploits against fish. Against regs, regs are a little more tricky. Regs tend to underbluff in tight configurations, on ace-high boards, in 4-bet pots and when the money goes in, but they tend to overbluff in wide versus wide configurations, on double Broadway boards, in single raise pots, or when the pot isn't huge. So we see there's a lot more nuance. So the reg exploits are going to be, maybe we overfold in tight configurations, ace-high boards, 4-bet pots when the money goes in, but we overcall, we just call all the time in wide configs, double Broadway boards, single raise pots, or when the pot isn't huge. And then against regs, we want to fast play in spots they underbluff when they have a strong range, and we want to underbluff in spots they're supposed to fold strong hands, and we want to trap in spots where they overbluff, and we want to overbluff in spots they're supposed to call weak hands. We see already how much more complex this is, and it doesn't mean it's impossible. We got a bunch of videos on this channel about how to exploit regs and how to beat them up, but in general, so many players want to chase the shiny thing instead of just mastering the actual boring work that's going to boost the win rate the most, that's going to have the highest ROI. If you can't crush fish, you're never going to be able to beat up good players because the mistakes good players make are generally smaller, less reliable, and harder to spot. Most players, they want more, they want new, they want shiny, they want a secret, but you want to know the real secret. If you want to win the most, you just have to do the boring work. All right, guys, so if you're here, you're probably a winning player who wants to be a big winning player, and no doubt you could probably get there on your own. But if you want to speed this process up, Basecamp is the way to get there a whole lot faster. If you've gotten value from this video, if you've gotten value from any of the videos on this channel, I like to say, in my very biased opinion, our free shit is better than most people's paid shit. But most of the best stuff, the real sauce, we keep locked behind a vault. That's what we discuss in Basecamp. So if you want the real sauce, 5-day Basecamp, that's where you go. Either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you and have a gentle